Today's criminal justice system is not without fault. The organization The Innocence Project, to date, has helped to free or exonerate more than 200 people who collectively spent more than 3,600 years behind bars. Tonight, we bring you an urgent plea for clemency for a mother who sits on death row and is scheduled to be executed by the state of Texas at the end of this month for the murder of her young daughter. The trouble is, many people believe there was no murder at all. We'll also share with you the posthumous exoneration of Timothy Cole, an example of Texas's complicated track record for convictions and exonerations. Join us tonight to learn about this coerced confession in a disgraced DA's office. This is the case of Melissa Lucio. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, welcome to the Lost Souls of America podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and joining us tonight is our beautiful producer, Amelia. Hi, Amelia.
Hey, Jamie. How are you this week?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm okay.
I have an update.
Oh, really? What is it?
I do. So you remember last week when I told everybody that they should join us in this Facebook group so that we can help find that unidentified hiker on the Benton McKay Trail in Georgia?
I do, yes.
Well, they found him.
Whoa.
So he has been positively identified as Stephen Lucas Ryan, age 41 of Pennsylvania. We don't know anything else at the moment. Nothing else about him has been released. And so we're going to give the family privacy while they grieve. But I just wanted to give everybody that update. I'm not really sure where the group is going to go from here. I think that the people that are involved behind the scenes in the group all have very big hearts. And I'm sure that it will get picked up again at some point. So I would still encourage you to be part of the group, even if we're taking a little hiatus in between cases, because I don't think any of us are going to just let it go. You know, we're all people that are going to keep bringing it back up. Even if we say we're not going to, we're all going to. So I would encourage you to please continue to check out that group and continue to look for other ways that you can get involved. Do you have any cases that you want to share with us, Amelia?
I do, Jamie. I have one that hits close to home. Literally.
I was going to say that. Literally.
Literally. This is a Brittany McCormick, and she was last seen in July 2021 in Hanover, Massachusetts, which is literally less than a quarter of a mile from my house. And so she went missing back in July. She's now 28 years old. She was 27 when she went missing. She has blonde hair and brown eyes. She's about 5'3" tall. She has 2 young children and a family that really misses her and really is doing everything in their power to find her. Now, this story kind of reminds me a little bit of Mary, who we covered last month, because Brittany has a pervasive developmental disorder, which in the past has led people to take advantage of her. And her family's really worried that something might have happened with that. She was last seen in July, but her family didn't end up reporting her missing until September when they realized. I think she was kind of estranged from some of the people in the family. Right now, Hanover police are working with the state police and high-risk victims unit. On our social media, we're going to share posters for that. There's a group for her, Finding Brittany McCormick, on Facebook. There's a lot of talk about putting together search parties for her and trying to organize that. So if you're in Massachusetts, if you're close to the South Shore, please give that group a follow. This family is really committed to finding their daughter. There's currently a $5,000 reward for any information that could lead to her being found. And you don't need to give names. You don't need to tell what happened. They just want to know where their daughter is.
Thanks, Amelia. At your suggestion, I joined that Facebook group myself, and I'm happy to be a part of that. I think it's important that we're going to stay posted and we're going to keep everybody posted.
Yeah, I really hope they find her, because around here, we're small little towns. Hanover, Norwell, I mean, all these South Shore towns were little. Not a lot of people go missing. And when people do go missing, they don't go missing for 8, 9, 10 months. So it's really upsetting. And I hope everyone keeps Brittany in their prayers, and especially her family, because they're definitely hurting and definitely keeping the light on for her.
Will do. Thank you. Before I tell you tonight's story, I actually wanted to first tell you someone else's story because I want to help you understand why this topic is so important. The state of Texas is number one in the country in executions. No surprise to anybody, I'm sure. But they're also known for moving through the judicial process at lightning speed compared to other states. As of today, Texas has executed almost 600 people since the 80s, with 199 people sitting on death row waiting for their turn right now as we speak. The Innocence Project says that Texas has had 40 exonerations that were proven by DNA testing, meaning 40 cases where they could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the wrong person had been put in jail for the crime. One such case was the tragic tale of Timothy Cole. In March of 1985, a 24-year-old Texas Tech student named Michelle Mallon was attacked while she was parking her car in a church parking lot across from her dorm room. She said that a young African-American male approached her asking for jumper cables, only to force her into the back seat at knife point. The man drove her to a vacant field, brutally raped her with a knife to her throat, and then drove her back to town and left on foot. Her description of the man was vague. Young, black, yellow t-shirt and sandals, and a constant cigarette smoker. The police at the time actually suspected that this was the work of a serial rapist who'd already assaulted several others on or near the Texas Tech campus. Tim Cole was a 26-year-old Army vet and a Texas Tech student who came on police's radar as a suspect when he was seen in a pizza shop between campus and the crime scene. Police brought Michelle Mallon what they called a quote-unquote photo lineup. And we say that in air quotes here because let me describe it to you. The police showed this traumatized woman 5 photos of criminal mugshots, all from a side profile, and one forward-facing Polaroid photo in his apartment of Tim Cole. In a game of one of these things is not like the other, Tim Cole was the unlucky winner here. She pointed to the Polaroid and said, "That's him." Cole was arrested and charged. And on trial, the state's tech evidence was just obviously not where it is today. DNA wasn't really much of a thing back then, so the closest we could get was a match on blood types. But apparently, only certain people, known scientifically as secretors, can reveal their blood type through other bodily fluids besides blood. While both Cole and Michelle Mallon had type A blood, only the victim was known for sure to be what they call a secretor. So the type A bodily fluids found in her rape kit really could not conclusively be linked to Cole at trial. But it was. Another bit of evidence that the prosecutors presented, even though their own experts admitted it was not conclusive, was a pubic hair comparison, saying that the hairs they found on the victim looked kind of close enough like Cole's to maybe mean it was him. Despite the fact that Cole's alibi checked out, he was home studying and his brother had several friends over for a poker game who could verify. Despite the fact that Cole was severely asthmatic and not even once, a cigarette smoker. Despite the fact that Cole's attorney presented evidence to show that the attacks were still going on while Cole was in prison, Cole was convicted on a 25-year sentence after just 6 hours of deliberation by the jury. Cole tried again and again to declare his innocence, exhausting all of his appeals. In 1995, after the statute of limitations on Michelle Mallon's rape had run out, a convicted rapist serving 99 years wrote a letter claiming responsibility for the rape of the victim from the Tim Cole case. His name was Jerry Wayne Johnson, and his letter was ignored. Cole died in prison just a few years later, never having even known about the letter. Johnson, though, continued to confess, continued to write more letters, continued to say that Cole was innocent. It was me. Eventually, this stunning news reached the hands of Tim Cole's grieving family and then the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project is a nonprofit organization founded in 1992 by Barry C. Scheck and Peter Neufeld at the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law at Yeshiva University. The Innocence Project works to free the innocent, prevent wrongful convictions, and create fair, compassionate, and equitable systems of justice for everyone. They say that their work is guided by science and grounded in anti-racism. Now, let me read you this quote from the Innocence Project about what happened next in the Timothy Cole case after his passing in 1999. Attorneys at the Innocence Project of Texas sought posthumous DNA testing in the case, and Lubbock prosecutors cooperated. DNA testing conducted on semen from the crime scene excluded Cole and implicated Johnson as the perpetrator. Cole was cleared by DNA tests in 2008, and at a hearing in February of 2009, Johnson again confessed to the crime officially before a judge, Cole's family, and the victim, Malin. The Innocence Project joined with the Innocence Project of Texas as co-counsel on this case, and a Texas judge officially exonerated Cole at an unprecedented posthumous hearing on April 7, 2009. Texas Governor Rick Perry pardoned Cole on March 1, 2010. Since Cole's posthumous exoneration, the state of Texas has passed the Timothy Cole Act, increasing compensation paid to exonerees to $80,000 per year served, expanding services offered to the exonerated after their release, and adding compensation for the family of an exoneree if cleared after death. The state also created the Timothy Cole Advisory Panel on Wrongful Convictions in 2009 to study the prevention of wrongful convictions across the state. Unfortunately for tonight's story, DNA testing is not an option because Melissa Lucio and her supporters say that there was no murder in the first place. Are you ready to hear all about it?
Yeah, I think we should just jump right in.
Melissa Lucio was brought up in Lubbock, Texas. She was raised in a Catholic Mexican-American family with many siblings and a rocky relationship with her mother. Melissa watched her mom, Hope, face physical abuse at the hands of her romantic partners, and she herself also suffered through years of prolonged sexual abuse from family members and other adults she was supposed to trust. This all began at a very young age, and her mother admits to not believing her when she tried to seek help, so the pattern continued. When she was just 16, Melissa married an older man in an attempt to escape her childhood. She moved out and had 5 children by the time she was 24 years old. But Melissa's examples of what love should be were not great growing up, and as a result, neither were her relationships. That marriage was allegedly abusive and unhappy, and when they eventually divorced, it was a pattern that Melissa continued to repeat. By the time Melissa was arrested in 2007, she had 12 children between the ages of 2 and 15, and she was pregnant with twins. Experts they interviewed for the documentary, The State of Texas versus Melissa, said that motherhood may have been the only place Melissa found any value and worth. She often chose men who were abusive, addicted, and had criminal involvement. Whether it was self-medicating or perhaps pushed by her partners, Melissa herself ended up with some substance abuse disorder, and her drug of choice seemed to be cocaine. Financially, things for Melissa were always extremely tight, even facing periods of homelessness as a family. Child Protective Services had been involved several times, and Melissa was often on their radar for these issues. On February 17, 2007, the youngest baby, Mariah, tragically never woke up from her nap. Her little body was brought to a medical examiner who saw bruising and determined quickly that she had been abused. While the family was reeling from the horror of this tragic death, police aggressively interrogated Melissa for hours and hours for the murder of her daughter. Pregnant with twins, she'd had no sleep, no food, no drink, and had just lost her child. Footage from the interrogation shows police get in her face and make her beat a doll as an example of how she hits her own children. At 3 a.m., an exhausted and defeated Melissa, who had already said she didn't hurt her baby more than 80 times, finally agreed, "I guess I did it." Melissa was tried for capital murder, meaning the intentional and planned murder of her daughter, Mariah. She was sentenced to the death penalty. The Innocence Project is now representing her and asking for an urgent call to action to help get her sentence vacated. So what really happened? On February 15th, 2007, 2 days before Mariah's death, the family was moving from one apartment to another. The old place had a long, steep, dilapidated wooden staircase down to the ground level. Little Mariah actually had a mild physical disability, which caused her to be a bit unsteady on her toddler legs. More than one of her siblings report Mariah taking a bad fall down the stairs that day, but they all said that she was fine. She cried, sure, and they consoled her, and everyone went on as normal. 2 days later, she fell asleep for a nap and never woke up, having died of a brain bleed. Upon examination after her death, the bruising on the girl's body was of a questionable nature, and the examiner immediately linked it to abuse. But according to the experts on Melissa's side, especially forensic pathologist Thomas Young, brain bleeds can do that to you. Poor little Mariah was suffering those 2 days from bleeding in her brain, and the strange and staggered appearance of the bruises was actually a result of that brain bleed as the tissue began to die. He says that even the slightest touch could have left a bruise-like mark on her body. But did Melissa abuse her kids? Despite a very long case file with Child Protective Services, there is absolutely no evidence that Melissa ever abused any of her children. The state didn't even present any evidence of this in their case. Melissa's other kids say she never abused any of them, and they never saw her abuse Mariah. In fact, they all say that during the window of time, Melissa was never even alone with Mariah. Yes, she struggled to provide for her family. Yes, she struggled to stay sober. But no one anywhere can verify that she was physically abusive. So why would she confess? Well, Melissa Lucio spent her entire life trying to survive abuse, coercion, and manipulation from men. I'm getting emotional because this part of it is so unfair to me. Sorry. Whew. Think about it, though. Giving in to a threatening man of power had been her means of survival since she was a small child. According to the Innocence Project, 27% of exonerations were from false confessions. Research has shown that survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence are at a much higher risk for falsely confessing. Experts for Melissa Lucio's team who reviewed the hours of interrogation footage agree that she was, quote, relentlessly pressured and extensively manipulated. Why would the state pursue this so hard then? And why would the jury convict? Well, this is where the story gets even more controversial. In 2008, the Cameron County District Attorney was a man named Armando Villalobos. Now, we all know that a lot of the higher levels of the judicial system are positions of politics, and he was up for re-election as the DA. Villalobos was a rising political star who had his eyes on the White House and wanted to make a big name for himself. He'd previously come under fire for not properly investigating over 100 cases of child abuse, and he was looking to reinvigorate his position as one that was tough on crime. Melissa's team of attorneys and supporters feel that this was the primary motive for seeking capital punishment. In order to charge Melissa with capital murder and be eligible for the death penalty, the state was claiming, and by the way, was expected to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, that Melissa intentionally, willfully, and with planning murdered her daughter. If the state could successfully achieve a capital conviction here, Melissa Lucio would be the first Latina woman on death row, a major boost to Villalobos' image. What's crazy is that it may have worked because he was reelected in November after her conviction. But his political career did not last. According to official court documents, in May 2013, a federal jury convicted Villalobos of one count of violating the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, known as the RICO Act, 1 count of conspiracy to violate the RICO Act, and 5 counts of extortion. And that's from justice.gov.
And just to put that in layman's terms for everyone, that means he was involved with the mob.
Oh, yeah.
That means he was involved in organized crime, just in case anyone was wondering what that meant.
Totally. So according to the federal prosecutor on that trial, he was deeply involved in organized crime and lots of drug trafficking rings. He was on the take. He was looking the other way and he was totally on the take, deep in it, deep in it. You'll be happy to know he is currently serving 13 years, which I think is small, in a federal prison for that crime.
You know what's wild about that, though, is think about how many more people probably died because he did that by being involved in drug trafficking and being involved, especially down in Texas, where there's a lot of, working with cartels and things down there. And he got 13 years. And this woman's getting put to death.
Right. I mean, how many undocumented people were affected by his work that we'll never know about? I think the numbers of the damage that he did is probably staggering and incalculable.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a word? Incalculable?
Yeah.
Close enough. You all know what I meant.
I think it's the word.
There are also a lot of people who feel that Melissa was not adequately represented in court, which is a deep rabbit hole to go down should you choose to. Some people blame incompetence. Some point toward conspiracy here because Peter Gilman, who represented her, is now the assistant district attorney. He says himself that he never had any intention of switching offices. It just happened that way. But it's also worth noting that her other defense attorney, Irma Gilman, is now one Judge Garcia's court administrator. So Melissa's new attorneys have filed some motions to have certain people withheld from any future proceedings because of their affiliations with the previous trial. One thing to know is that no matter which way you slice it, Melissa's story really was not properly shared with the jury. Many experts feel that the jury should have been let in more on Melissa's background to understand the circumstances which would have caused her to confess. Absolutely no witnesses were called in her defense. None of her children were permitted to testify about what they saw or didn't see, such as the fall down the stairs and the allegations of abuse. Surely also her lifelong history of sexual assault and domestic violence were worthwhile bits of evidence to know in explanation for her statement at the interrogation. Similarly, they weren't properly informed of Mariah's medical conditions or symptoms which would have contributed to her bruising that looked like abuse. The real question that everyone should be screaming here is, did Melissa get a fair trial? And if your answer is no, even if you're unclear or undecided on Melissa's role in her daughter's death, it's worth sticking around for our calls to action at the end of this episode. On April 15th, 2022, so Amelia, if you're keeping score, that was 2 days ago for us here as we're recording, Melissa's new attorney team have filed a 242-page application for a writ of habeas corpus asking the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals to stay her scheduled April 27th, 2022 execution and vacate her conviction and her death sentence. Let me read you a quote directly from one of her attorneys, Vanessa Potkin, who's the director of special litigation for the Innocence Project. She said, if the jury had heard evidence about the coercive tactics used in Melissa's interrogation and the medical evidence showing that Mariah's cause of death was consistent with an accident, they would have found there was no murder. Melissa would have been acquitted, and she would be preparing for Easter Mass with her children, not facing execution. She deserves a new trial. That is where we are at today. Melissa is scheduled to be executed in less than 2 weeks as of present moment here that we are recording. Do you have any final thoughts for us tonight, Melissa? I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll let you go first.
I'm Amelia.
Oh my God, what the hell did I just call you, Melissa?
You called me Melissa.
Oh. Jeez. I really... She's been on my mind a lot lately, as you can tell.
And I don't blame you. I do. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I have a lot of thoughts on Timothy Cole, too. But with Melissa, being poor isn't a crime, and that's not a reason you should die. And being a drug addict also isn't a crime and a reason you should die. And the fact of the matter is, accidents happen. And was this an accident? Wasn't it an accident? At the end of the day, it doesn't look like I don't even know how to say this. Even if it was abuse, it still seems like an accidental death.
100%. Neglectful at the worst.
Absolutely. And while any type of abuse on a small child is unacceptable, it is not a reason why you need to take away so many other kids' mothers and put them to death. It's just, it's crazy to me to think about. And again, you know, I feel like it's 2022. It's so easy to like throw like, this is racism, that's racism, whatever. But again, like as a middle-class woman in a suburb of Boston, I can't imagine me being in this situation and me getting put to death.
This would never happen to you.
It would never happen. And then also sitting here as a pregnant woman, thinking about this other pregnant woman having to be talked to till 3 a.m., not eating, not drinking. I can't even imagine that. When you're pregnant, your brain is goop to begin with. Yeah. It's goop.
You're not firing on all cylinders there.
If you're hungry, it's a hunger like no other. All you can think about is the little baby, in her case, little babies inside of you. Like I'm checking my phone constantly, remembering when I drink water, remembering when I do this to make sure I'm doing everything right. Like I couldn't imagine being forced to be yelled at in a room with police officers, not knowing who's taking care of my kids while I'm here. Well, I have these other 2 little babies inside of me. I mean, you can't go that long without eating. You just can't. So the whole thing is just atrocious on so many levels. And, you know, it's like you said, Jamie, you're exactly right. Whether or not you think she did it, whether or not you're unsure if she did it, it still doesn't add up. Why is she
deserves a new trial. She deserves a new trial. At the
very least. Like,
I don't think she deserves a new trial, period. I think she deserves to go home. That's my personal opinion. Now that we're at the end of the episode, I'm going to straight up say it. But I think
a baby did die, right? Like a child died, right? So there needs to be some kind of accountability there, right? But it's a matter of, how did it happen? It seems very consistent and tragic that it could be falling down the stairs, having a brain bleed, having a concussion, falling asleep and not waking up.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say, you know, honestly, I really, really resisted watching the documentary, The State of Texas versus Melissa Lucio. I was totally convinced that I could tell this story appropriately with like articles only. I told myself that the reason I wanted to do that was so that I was unbiased, so that I didn't, you know, like fall in, like, I don't know. I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at both sides logically. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I think the real reason, now that I've watched it and I have some reflection in me, I think the real reason I didn't want to watch it was because I was nervous about getting attached to her and her story. And I was right. I watched it and I cried the entire 2 hours. It's so painful to watch. And when I was done, I wholeheartedly agreed that I don't think she got a fair interrogation. I don't think she got fair representation. I don't think she got a fair trial. I don't think she got fair appeals. And I'm crushed for her. But worst of all, they do a lot of interviews with her kids, who are mostly grown at this point because she's been in jail since 2007. Their family was torn apart. They've never even met the twins. Mm-hmm. They were sent different places.
Yeah.
Some of them don't even speak.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Another thought that I had while you were actually talking, I don't remember what it was, but something that you said made me go, wait a minute. If people are saying that one of the reasons that they believe that maybe Melissa Lucio was capable of abuse was because of how thick her file with CPS was, why are we not investigating CPS? Why are we not pushing for reform in the child protective services in this case? Because if her living situation was so bad and her file was that thick, where was all the help?
Yeah.
Where were the services for these people?
Why
were they homeless?
Yeah.
Why were they sharing a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment?
Mm-hmm.
Why was she on her own?
Yeah. I
And
couldn't
look,
agree with you more.
drugs are bad, okay? But a woman who has been abused her entire life and now has 12 children to try to take care of alone with no help, maybe she needed a little something for energy. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I don't think drugs are right, but like, am I surprised that she sometimes did cocaine? No.
Yeah. I
You know
mean,
what I
it's
mean?
awful. It's awful. Being a drug addict doesn't mean you should get put to death.
Right, right. And
It
it's not,
doesn't.
like I don't want to play the comparison game of which drug is worse because they're all bad in their own way. But like this wasn't one that caused her to like be unconscious on the floor for 10 hours while her children had to take care of themselves. This was cocaine.
I don't know. Cocaine's pretty bad. If you do enough
Yeah, and
cocaine, it gets pretty bad.
They well, I guess
Things can
maybe I just
escalate
haven't,
pretty quick.
maybe I haven't done enough cocaine. But But, they did say that sometimes she would lock herself in the bathroom for a couple of hours, but they all of her kids agreed that it was like she would do it to like get better and then coming back and be a mom. Again, it wasn't like a situation where they ever really saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So even as a drug addict, I still feel like she was doing her best as a drug addict, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
It does. I'm also against drugs, especially, I guess, expensive drugs if you have 12 children. But at the same time, there are so many affluent women doing cocaine all the time with children, and they would never get in trouble. This is people. It really, to me, it just feels like it comes down to socioeconomics. Like she's poor and that's it. And now you took away a mom to all these kids. And so then we have to think about like, what's the consequences of that, right? Like now these children, dozen kids don't grow up with a mom and like and they don't have a father in their life. So like
14 with the twins.
What are the, what are the consequences there?
Right. And these kids are the ones that have paid the price their whole lives.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. If she dies, and I think she's feeling the weight of that, to see her interviews, it's really, really sad. It's really sad. And I think that's why I resisted the documentary, because I knew that it would break my heart. And it did, but I wish I could make it like assigned homework for everyone on the planet.
Yeah.
Because it was important. So everybody, please go get your heart broken. It's on Hulu. Join me. And then we've got a bunch of calls for action that we're going to give you. But I just want to say, unless you believe that Melissa intentionally and willfully murdered her daughter and also got a completely fair and unbiased journey through the entire judicial system, this case should make you feel rageful. Even if you think she's responsible by neglect, this is not how the system is supposed to work. And we have to hold the law accountable for these kinds of cases. If we as the public are not standing up and making sure that the system is working, then we are failing everyone. This was not a case where a true murder occurred, at least not in my opinion, but it does happen there too. And for every murder case that convicts the wrong person, a true killer goes free. So if Melissa's life isn't enough for you to get in the fight, and then consider fighting for any of those victims. We're going to leave all the sources on our website as we always do, but this week I think that they're really informative, so I would encourage you to check those out. I used a lot on this case. We've got a lot of good links, I think, to the Innocence Project and a lot more links on there. So I will make sure those are up on the website. Amelia, did you want to share our call to action tonight, or did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Just that it's really unjust and it's really upsetting. When you're talking about Timothy Cole, all I could think about was Brock Turner and Derek Nygaard, who were two college athletes who got this slap on the wrist when everyone knew they did it. They were convicted without any question. They admitted it. I mean, they get this slap on the wrist, and this guy, this black man down in Texas gets put to death. And again, it feels like the same thing of, well, he's just a black guy, so we're going to put him to death. With her, it's like, oh, well, she's just a poor woman and a drug addict. We'll just put her to death. Like one less person to have to worry about.
I just want to clarify something. When I told you about this case initially, I think I told you that he was put to death when we were texting. I actually think that he was not put to death, but nothing says how he died. I think
he died in jail. So whatever happened, it's very upsetting. And I just think it's too bad. You know, we've said this before on the show that, you know, we're at a changing point in this country, but there's still so much more that needs to change.
So much more, so much more. And it's never
So
going to
much more.
change unless we fight for it. We as people have to stand up and fight for it.
Exactly. So if you want to help fight for Melissa, something you can do is we want to tell Governor Abbott and the Texas Board of Pardons and Parole that if they can see overwhelming support for Miss Lucio, that we can make a huge difference in this. So one thing you guys can all do, please go online, sign the Innocence Project petition. We'll link that in our show notes. You can also call Governor Abbott and the Texas Board of Pardons and Parole by dialing 956-446-2866. You can also go ahead and call the Cameron County District Attorney and ask them to withdraw Miss Lucio's execution date, which again is coming up at the end of this month. That number is 956-300-3881. If you want to just, you know, maybe you don't want to do that, you want to spread some awareness online, you can do the hashtag Save Melissa Lucio, and that's Lucio spelled Lucio. And be sure when you do this that you're making sure that you put that she's getting executed on April 27th for a tragic accident. That's going to help raise public awareness, and hopefully we can get even more people to sign these petitions, to be calling Governor Abbott, to be calling the Cameron County District Attorney. And the very last thing, you can go to bonfire.com/store/save-Melissa-Lucio, and you can purchase, they have some gear there, you know, shirts, masks, things like that. And that money is going to go and help for her attorney fees.
Wow. Thank you. And that's that's a really long list. So I hope that you can find in that list. I hope that our listeners tonight can find even one way to help. If you are listening to this from the future, including me, when I listen to this down the road, right? I don't know what to say. It's occurring heavily on my heart that people may only come to this episode when it's too late. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's really weighing on me. So let's all just, I don't know if you pray or you want to keep them in your good thoughts, like, I'm just going to really be hoping that this goes, and it's not going to go without people's action, but I'm really just going to hope that this goes Melissa's way and she at least gets a stay so that we can continue to follow this longer and she's got a chance. So that's all we have for you tonight. Thank you for listening. You can find shareable content on our social media at Lost Souls of America and our website, lostsoulsofamerica.com. Please share often and help spread awareness for their cases. This one especially, please share it urgently as quickly as you can. These are the stories of the voiceless. These are the Lost Souls of America.